What happens if you use the same speaker for all of your 5-channel speaker setup? Edifier, in their infinite wisdom, decided to enable me to do this experiment and sent over 3 pairs of their passive P12 speakers, links below. And honestly, this thing shocked me for a few reasons, but we'll talk about that. Hey guys, Ron Thomas here, and a big thanks to Edifier for enabling this project. We'll talk more about their speakers in a bit, but do you ever notice that when you see home theatre setups, that there are usually 3 different types of speakers, excluding the sub of course. You will likely find towers at the front, bookshelves at the rear, and a dedicated centre channel that looks a little different to the rest. And that's for a few reasons. Most of the dialogue will come from that centre, if it's set up correctly, meaning that most effects come from the left and the right. And you usually get a sprinkling of effects for the surrounds or the rears, or above if you are so inclined. This isn't a hard and fast rule. Sometimes different mixers do different things, and some people might have bookshelves in all 4 corners and no towers at all, or all towers in the corners and no bookshelves. But this is a general setup that you might have seen before. Using the same speaker for the center though is usually not the best idea. Why? Because you want clarity from your center channel. And sometimes that requires specific drivers and hardware. Actually, I'll leave a link to Zeos's video on center channels in the description. He goes into detail and demonstrates it, and it makes a lot more sense when you watch that video. But back to today's topic at hand, I set up 5 of these. They're Edifier P12s, which are a compact, cheap, no frills, compact bookshelf speaker in as good a position as I could possibly get them and keep them looking okay. I hooked them up to my Onkyo AVR, which is an older, cheaper model. It's the NR636, and spent an hour going through all the configuration, the settings, moving the speakers slightly, just adjusting their positioning. And given I live mid-terrace in a pretty quiet estate with some really nice neighbours, I didn't want to go crazy with the sound in this house, because you can hear when people walk across the landing in the house next door. I didn't want that to be an issue, especially with bass. And the P12, being a small speaker, is ideal for this. Notice though that there is no subwoofer in this setup, despite having Edifier's own T5 to hand, because obviously not annoying my neighbours was a bit of a priority, but actually I wasn't expecting the 4-inch driver of the P12 to produce as much bass as it does, because it's a small cone, and you don't have to turn the volume up very high. But you know what? These things did way more than I expected. There's a nice note weight to these, and the low down help gives the sound a sort of grander, more substantial feeling. It's less thin, it's less tinny, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. And many a soundbar in this price category would give you a pretty tinny mid-range, because they're just not very good at that. And though these things aren't too clear or too sharp, they do a good job of giving you enough detail, and for the size and price, I can't complain. As you can see here, I have had to resort to some creative ways, let's say, of mounting and situating my speakers, but the final result from a sound standpoint is honestly decent. No, but really, it sounds better than I expected. I've watched a few films on this. I watched the first Star Wars film because of the pod racing scene. I watched the Into the Spider-Verse film. We played a fair few games on this. Actually, I really enjoy playing Apex Legends with this just because of the crazy soundstage. But I want to focus on that center channel for a minute, because it's the odd one out. It's the one that isn't meant to be the way it is. It's not that specific center channel speaker, and it shows. It's not pin sharp. You don't get that grand sound to the dialogue, whereas something with 2 or more woofers and a bigger tweeter would really shine. Something like even a cheaper monitor audio unit would do a good job of. But comparing it to my TV's already pretty good built-in speakers, the difference in quality, immersion, the clarity, it's night and day. The P12s work great for music, for games, for films and TV. Really is a jack of all trades, and for about £70 a pair, that's incredible value for money. I also demoed the Planet Earth and the Blue Planet series, and what I found was that there is value to be had by using this in a 5.0 setup, obviously not 0.1 because there's no sub. It's not ideal, it's not what I would recommend to those of you who have grander budgets, more space, live in sort of maybe a detached house so you don't have to worry about bass and about the sound annoying the neighbours. If you're looking to put together a setup like this, I'll tell you, it works. It's just not optimal. And if you can tinker one thing, I would say replace the center channel. But these work in the corners. Like, there's enough bass, there's enough soundstage, they're cheap, they're really small, they're easy to fit into places where you don't necessarily have room for a giant speaker. But you can get a decent sound, and it will blow a soundbar out of the water. But I think the biggest benefit for one of these kinds of setups is its modularity. As I was saying, I probably want to switch out to the center channel for something a bit better. You could start with the second-hand AVR and over time upgrade to sort of an Atmos capable one or a 4K 120 capable one. You can start with these P12s. You can start with a pair, just have the left and right. And if you want to, add some surrounds, maybe add a center channel. You know, you can start and just move your way up. And because these things are intercompatible, you could have the full 5.1 setup and then decide you want a feature. You can change the AVR out and you don't have to change the speakers. It's really, really handy in that regard. And you know what? Need to borrow a pair of speakers for the office or the kitchen or a party? Just disconnect a pair and take them with you. You could just leave the cables in place and just buy a separate set of cables to take with you. There's a lot of flexibility that something like a home cinema in a box or a soundbar that just cannot do. And then add in the fact that, say you want something that has a different kind of Wi-Fi. Say they invent a new Wi-Fi. You change out the AVR, but your speakers are still good. The P12s are really decent for the money, but they do take a fair amount to drive. They are 6 ohms, and I had to turn the volume on my NR636 up more than I did with my much larger, much more capable Philips speakers. I'm not an audio technician, so I don't know the reasons behind this, but it was just worth noting that I had to turn the volume up a little bit more, even though they are such small speakers. I would also like to point out that you are rewarded when you turn these things up. So at a low volume, because they're inefficient, they do take away some of that fullness. And if you turn them up, you'll get that fullness coming in along with the volume. So actually, you wanted a reasonable level before you can get the benefits of the full speaker. I also like the fact that there's the cable channels on the back of them and the fact that they have little hooks. So you can just like plop them on the back wall. Given that they have the front port, it means that you can put them sort of against the wall and not have to worry much about the bleed or the boominess. It's not great, and I'd still recommend you keep them a little bit away from the wall, but if you have to, it's an option. A big thanks to Edifier for providing the products for today's wacky experiment. They are not paying me to make this video, they're not paying me at all, and they're not seeing this before you, so you can, you know, you can trust me, it's a review. Okay, let me give one negative of it. They don't sound amazing, but they're like 70 quid a pair, so who cares? Anyway, let me know in the comments if you've cobbled together a setup like this or you're looking to make one. And I cannot wait to hear from the audio purists just replying in absolute disgust in the comment section. For those of you who've stuck around this long, thank you all so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe to never miss an upload. I've been Ryan Thomas and I'll catch you later. Cheers.